The Justice Department is defending Attorney General Jeff Sessions after a speech to the National Sheriff's Association. The controversy is over this moment.
The office of sheriff is a critical part of the Anglo-American heritage of law enforcement. We must never erode this historic office.
That remark this morning about law enforcement having an Anglo-American heritage was apparently unscripted. The original text of the speech was, "The sheriff is a critical part of our legal heritage." The Justice Department says the comment referred to law enforcement's English roots.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions spoke at the National Sheriff's Association winter meeting in Washington. He talked about law enforcement efforts and the push to combat transnational crime and gangs like MS-13, the opioid epidemic, and the administration's position on sanctuary cities. This is 35 minutes.
Please be seated. You know, there's few times in a person's life that they get to have such an honor as to do what I'm about to do, and it's been bestowed upon me 2 times. We have with us the United States Attorney General, and ladies and gentlemen, perhaps the finest Attorney General the nation has ever had. He is a man of commitment, he is a man of dedication, but he's also a man of vision and leadership. Let me tell you just about him a little bit personally. Raised in Alabama, became a lawyer, became a prosecutor, became an attorney general of the state. He became a United States Senator. That alone is an enormous set of accomplishments. But what he has done this past year for us, for law enforcement, for our nation, to restore the rule of law is phenomenal. Ladies and gentlemen, it has given me no higher pleasure than to tell you, you have a friend who is listening and is doing exactly what law enforcement has asked for years. The list is long, whether it's asset forfeiture, returning of 1033 program, or the reversal of the Cole memoranda. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and give an amazing welcome to your Attorney General, Jeffrey Sessions.
Thank you all. Thank you. Well, thank you indeed. Thank you. Thank you so much. I gotta say, you made my Monday morning. Thank you, Jonathan, for those great words. Your friendship and the leadership that the Sheriff's Association provides to all law enforcement really in this country. It is indeed an honor for me. Spent quite a number of years, and 15 as a prosecutor mostly in law enforcement, and then 20 on Judiciary Committee overseeing the Department of Justice. So it in a way feels like returning home to return to that department. I love it, I respect it. We try to honor it every day in what we do. I know you believe the same things, those of you in law enforcement, and it's an honor for me to be with you and stand with you. Harold, thanks for your leadership and friendship also, over 30 years of service to law enforcement. We appreciate that, and to the people of Texas. Somebody said you have the smallest county in Texas. It's probably bigger than New Hampshire. I don't know what they have in Texas, but I also recognize Greg Champagne of St. Charles, Louisiana, Harold's predecessor. Before I say anything else, I'd like to acknowledge with great sadness that we lost 2 police officers this weekend. I know you saw that. Officers Anthony Morelli and Eric Jorning of Westerville, Ohio, were shot to death around noontime Saturday, responding to a call for help. That's what you do. That's what your deputies do every day. They're out there responding, trying to help people, and they're at risk every day. And the American people, I think, know that, and they need to be respected for that. So I want to join with President Trump in offering my condolences to their families at this difficult time. So it's an honor for me to be with you. This association is one of the biggest law enforcement groups in America, more than 20,000, 75 years of history here. So I thank you for what you do. I've heard how you've trained more than 1,000 officers in using Narcan, something we never thought about just a few years ago. An overdose reversal drug. You've donated thousands of Narcan kits across 21 different states, and I'm told you've already reversed hundreds of overdoses that could have led to death. So I'm pleased to see also that my home state of Alabama is well represented. We have 14 Alabama sheriffs, I'm told. Director Bobby Timmons, some of y'all know Bobby, he's been around. Usually can be heard wherever Bobby is. There I hear him. Yeah, there he is, right there. Also, Mike Hale and Hoss Mack, both friends of long standing, are on your board. And Mike's in Jefferson County, the biggest county, and Hoss is the best county down on the Gulf Coast. So if you get in trouble on the Redneck Riviera, Hoss will put you in jail, I can assure you. You know, one thing we offer in federal government, I like to tell this story to foreign people, and you know, we're talking to law enforcement, and it's true. So you've heard of the Floribama in Hoss's district, and it's on the Florida-Alabama line, and he was there during the Prohibition day. It goes back, I don't know how many years. But if they got raided from Florida, they'd all run over to the Alabama side. If they got raided from Alabama, they'd all run over to the Florida side. So sometimes we in federal law enforcement can help you by not being so bound by those jurisdictional limits, and can be really good partners with you in important cases. So I know many of you have met with President Trump, and Jonathan, I believe you'll be doing that again. He is very open. He's very serious when he says, I am a law and order president. I doubt any president has met with more law enforcement groups in the time he's been there, and it's not as if he hadn't had a few other things to do. And he has done that regularly. So I do think I appreciate your comments in saying we do listen. We want to be partners because we want to improve public safety in America. We want to see it get better, safer. And we have to work with you to do that. And so I know that sometimes in the past, law enforcement has not received the support that it needs and it deserves. Politicians sometimes tie your hands and our hands with ineffective policies, or fail to understand the challenges, the dangers, the difficulties your deputies face every day. They just don't understand it, and sometimes they don't respect the importance of the work that they do. This is not good. So let me say this loud and clear. President Trump and I are proud to stand with you in our work. And the most important thing any government does is to keep its citizens safe, and the first civil right is the right to be safe. Too often we've seen bad judgment, even politics enter into the work that we do. So we're trying to confirm a number of important component heads at the Department of Justice. It's just getting to be frustrating, I got to tell you. That includes we're being blocked from confirming the head of the Criminal Division, our Civil Rights Division, our National Security Division. These are critically important components, and we've got outstanding nominees. I nominate to the National Security Division, the Anti-Terrorism Division, was approved unanimously in the committee. But because sometimes, and right now, one senator's concerns over unrelated issues, like reversing federal law against marijuana, we can't even get a vote. As Attorney General, I don't have the authority to say something that is legal if it's not legal. We need our nominees confirmed. Safety and security are important, and those of us who are gathered here know that protecting the safety and security of the American people is the mission that we share. That's what we do. President Trump understands that law enforcement officers are not the problem, you are the solution. I know firsthand the important work that each of you do. I was a federal prosecutor for 14 years. It was a small office. I knew Hoss Mack then when he was a young whippersnapper. Now he is the High Sheriff of Baldwin County, one of the biggest important counties in the state. And I was blessed to work with law officers in my office and working cases and trying cases with them sitting at my side in federal court. I know what you do. We're a small office, but we work closely with our sheriffs. And we knew our sheriffs in our district personally. And we prosecuted whole rafts of cases, gun cases, drug cases, dismantled international fraud schemes. We prosecuted civil rights offenders. Together we did. And you know, on the question of civil rights, if one of your officers misperforms, abuses his office, I've never found that law enforcement objects to those persons being prosecuted. We certainly intend to do our duty there, but single incidents within a department don't call for federal control of those departments. So we you have historic jurisdiction. Our chiefs of police have historic jurisdiction. States have a certain degree of sovereignty in what they do. And so we need to work together respectfully. There's nothing that I've been more proud of, I think, really, honestly, and felt more satisfaction from being United States Attorney and working on those cases with you, and I know you feel the same way. You are the thin blue line, we use that color loosely to cover our sheriffs, that stands between law-abiding people and the criminals, between sanctity and lawlessness. You protect our families, our communities, secure our country from drugs and violence. The people of this country, I think and am confident, appreciate what you do. And I was delighted that last summer Gallup released their annual poll, which showed that overall confidence in law enforcement increased significantly last year. Good? No. And that's a to the work that you are doing. And I'm not sure if you saw this, but there was a survey recently that showed more and more of our young people want to go into law enforcement. According to the survey, it used to be the number 10 dream job for kids under 12, law enforcement. Now it's number 3 overall, and for boys it's number 1 overall. I like that. Athletes dropped while law enforcement went up, I gotta say. So that tells me we're doing something right. That's one of my goals, is to use what a little bully pulpit influence I might have to celebrate the good things that you're doing. So I've been also hearing from law enforcement that recruiting new officers is getting more difficult. Well, I think that's a very serious issue, but maybe this poll shows we've turned the corner a little bit. I certainly hope so, but it remains, Jonathan, I know, Sheriff, a top concern of you. We want the best people They'll come into law enforcement and to feel that they're going to have a career of fulfillment and satisfaction and service to their community. We've got to keep that message out there every day. It was largely because of officers like your team that crime went down in this country over a period of 20 years. That's a remarkable thing. I was with former Attorney General Ed Meese the other day, and he reminded me of what I generally know, but from 64 to 80, crime in America tripled. And when I became United States Attorney appointed by Reagan in 1981, the murder rate was high. The murder rate has dropped to half of what it was in 1981. This is primarily the result of more sophisticated, better trained, smart policing and sheriff's work throughout this country, because that's where most of the work is being done. And we in federal government grew. We had honesty in sentencing. We had no parole. We did a number of things that also helped turn that tide. It was a long and historic decline, something I don't think most people in the early 1980s thought was possible. Crime went up every year during that period of time. And so over the last 2 or 3 years, the country and some leaders, I think, lost some focus that led to this progress. And your work has become more difficult. The result of some of our missteps is that violent crime went up by nearly 7% in 14, 15, and 16. Robberies went up. Assaults went up 10%. Rape went up nearly 11%. Murder shot up by more than 20% in 2 years. 12% in 15, which was the largest increase since 1968 in homicide, and another 8% the next year. Meanwhile, we've suffered the deadliest drug crisis in our history. We've never seen anything like the 64,000 deaths we had last year. Goodness gracious, that's just unprecedented. It's the largest cause of death among Americans under age 50, drug overdoses. It's really remarkable. So I don't think it was a coincidence that violent crime and drug use arose during this time. I was reading one of our department-funded studies that found that nearly a quarter of the increase in homicides is a result of increase in drug-related homicides. When I talk to people like you that are out on the front lines, they seem to confirm that. Some think it's even higher. I know one chief of police said he thought it was at least 50% of the increase in homicides in his jurisdiction dealt with drugs. That should be no surprise. Drug trafficking is inherently a dangerous business. If you want to collect a drug debt, you can't file a lawsuit in federal court. You collect it by a barrel of a gun. Addicts also become desperate and get into all kinds of terrible situations, and violence can often occur. So we are not going to stand by, you are not going to stand by and watch violence and addiction rise. Plain and simple. We will not allow the progress made by our men and women in blue over the past 2 decades to simply slip through our fingers. We will not cede one community, one street corner to violent drug dealers or gang members. We will protect the poor as well as we protect the rich. I know you feel that. That's our mission. That's what we're going to do. So as Attorney General, I'm committed to combating violent crime, supporting your work. I've made it a top priority at the department. The day I was sworn in as Attorney General, President Trump sent me a simple, direct, straightforward executive order. He knows how to do that pretty well. He said, reduce crime in America. not preside over ever-increasing crime rates, but to bring crime rates down. Well, we at the Department of Justice embrace that goal. We don't shrink from it. And you and I know from experience it can be done, particularly if we are working together at a high level. Some people don't think it's possible. They think crime rates are like the tides, they just go up or down, and nothing we do makes any difference. But strong law enforcement and smart prosecutions can bring crime down. And we're going to prove it can be done. It's our goal to reduce homicides in America. Not see them going up another 20%, go down. We want to reduce the overall numbers of opioid prescriptions. There's too much opioid prescriptions being put out in the streets today. I'm amazed. We've got cases against doctors. We had a drug takedown not long ago, and we had 50 doctors indicted. We've seen the data DEA is putting together in this package of data that shows the outliers in physicians and how much is being prescribed by certain physicians, and it's just shocking. This has got to stop. We can't have this continuing. This creates addiction, and people fail to know, but you know how tough these addictions are. People aren't just able to walk away and have a 2-week treatment and never be bothered by drug addiction anymore. These are devastating diseases for people when they become addicted, and it too often leads to death, leads to family breakup, bankrupts their mamas and daddies, and ends up being in jail for some offense or another. So these are important things. We're going to work on that, and we're going to reduce the overdose deaths. They don't need to be. There were 52,000 last year, 16, and 64,000 in 17. Back that up. 16 was 64,000. 15 was 52,000. We think at 17 numbers are coming in. We think there'll be a slight uptick, but we want it to go down this year. Down. Those are the explicit goals we're talking about in the department. Over the past year, we've taken real action on this. In 2017, the department brought cases against the greatest number of violent criminals in a quarter of a century. We charged the most federal firearm prosecutions in a decade. I think that's a good partnership. Hoss was in my district, Mike Hale. But we did a lot of those cases in a partnership way with our state and locals, and it was a very good way to bind ourselves together. We arrested and charged hundreds of people suspected of contributing to the opioid crisis. We secured the convictions of nearly 500 traffickers and 1,200 gang members, and worked with our international allies to arrest or charge more than 4,000 MS-13. We went down to El Salvador, and they were pretty supportive. Well, that's a big problem in El Salvador. They don't need to import it here. And if they're caught here, and they're selling dope here, and they're illegally here, they're out of here. Let me tell you that. So our success, they didn't like it, MS-13. The assistant director of the FBI's criminal division testified recently that MS-13 gang members back in El Salvador have taken notice of what's happening. They know that hundreds of their members are now behind bars, so now they're trying to send younger, more violent gang members to the United States to replenish their ranks. But that's not going to succeed either. We are going to continue to pound them. And I hope that as your people are out on the street, if you identify MS-13 members, I hope you'll just help us, because this is the most violent gang. What is it? Murder, rape, and control is their motto. Now, they're by far the most violent gang. So let's crush this bunch. Let's show them they can't take over our streets. at State of the Union, and I had met in New York previously, some months before, the mother and father of the two 16-year-old girls that apparently disrespected the MS gang people. So with baseball bats and machetes, one of them had just turned 16, the other one was a day away from being 16, and they murdered them with baseball bats and machetes. Now, this is the kind of thing we can't tolerate in this country. Well, it's another reason we are not going to stand by and acquiesce in the sanctuary cities to nullify federal immigration law if they want to receive federal grants. I don't want to defund any jurisdiction, cities, states, but we want them to rethink. We want them to change their policies and start to cooperate with our ICE officers, whose lives can be at risk when they go out in neighborhoods chasing somebody down when just a few days before they were in the state slammer. We can do better. So we're not going to send funds to jurisdictions who don't meet the minimum standards of partnership. All of us have known how the detainer system has worked for decades, and we're getting a lot more lawyers harassing and filing and objecting than before. But this partnership where one jurisdiction holds a prisoner for the other jurisdiction is fundamental to successful law enforcement. It's just basic partnership, and I know that this is important to you. And I was in Florida last week to discuss our ongoing opioid crisis, and I had the chance to meet with a number of Florida sheriffs. In working with you, the National Sheriff's Association, 17 Florida sheriffs have worked out an agreement with ICE to help them take the criminal aliens out of the Sunshine State. Aliens held by these sheriffs are held under color of federal authority that protects these sheriffs from being sued for doing their jobs. I think that's got... I'm hopeful that we're going to find this to be very successful. We've done this kind of thing before. Federal government pays and rents your spaces often to house prisoners, and we could maybe a good way to work this thing to ease some people's concerns. By definition, it seems to me, removing such aliens, criminal aliens from our communities, makes us safer. And I want... makes us safer in that way. You know, if you admit somebody to the country, and we can't admit all the people who apply, we should admit people who are going to flourish here. We should admit people who can be successful here. We should not admit people who want to come here to commit crimes. Why would we do that? And if they enter and commit crimes, they should be sent home. It's just that simple, and that's what immigration law has always been about until somehow we've lost our understanding of what the purpose of immigration law is. I also would ask you to consider the 287G program. I think it's a fabulous program. I supported my early days in the Senate. Alabama was one of the first states to adopt it, but we will train, cross-designate people in your department, in your jails, so that they can work effectively with federal law enforcement with the minimum problems and maximum protection from liability problems. So I hope that you will consider that as you go forward. So we're already starting to see some positive signs on the crime front. In the first 6 months of last year, the increase in the murder rate slowed significantly. In violent crime, the overall violent crime number went down. Preliminarily, we see in the first 6 months of this year. Publicly available data for the rest of the year suggests we may see some further reductions there. These are major accomplishments. that benefit the American people. And we could not have realized them without the leadership of you and your departments. Based on my experience in meeting with real officers in this country, I believe that morale is going up among our law enforcement community. I feel the difference when I travel around the state. It makes me feel really good. And I think we have a lot of good reasons to be encouraged. Any loss of life by our officers is too many. But it is encouraging that the number of officers killed in the line of duty declined last year and reached its second lowest level in more than half a century. That's something that we all should celebrate and be thankful for. But the number is too high, as the deaths in Ohio and our U.S. Marshal in Pennsylvania that we lost a few weeks ago certainly declare loudly. At the Department of Justice, we appreciate the service of every single federal agent. But we're aware that 85% of law enforcement is state, local, and tribal. 85%. Yours are the deputies that have the critical street-level knowledge, intelligence of what's happening in the community, the criminal element. Federal officers have the unique capability to follow a case across state borders and even across national borders, international borders, and we can be such great partners in that way. So we want to be a force multiplier for you. Our work is most effective when experienced state and local investigators are paired with the resources and expertise of our fine federal law officers. I just feel good about that partnership. I've seen it work. I know it works. We respect you. We know you don't work for us. I can tell you that. So that's why we've reinstated our equitable sharing program. Civil asset forfeiture is a key tool that helps law enforcement defund organized crime, take back ill-gotten gains, and prevent new crimes from being committed. It weakens the criminals and the cartels. Civil asset forfeiture takes the material support of the criminal and makes it material support of law enforcement. And departments across this country, funds that were once used to take lives are now being used to save lives. And there's nothing wrong with adoptive forfeitures. I try to tell my colleagues, but I got to tell you, Congress is worried about it. And it's no little matter. And we've all worked on it, and Jonathan and Harold and others, and it's really important that we convey to them how important forfeiture is, how it's always been part of our system, and how the Supreme Court on multiple occasions has affirmed it. There's no serious case that's ever knocked down these forms. They'll say it's unconstitutional. Well, how can it be? I mean, the Supreme Court's been ruling on this for years. These cases have. So, and adoptive forfeitures can't be adopted and carried out in federal court unless the evidence your officers bring forward, your deputies bring forward, is sufficient to justify a federal forfeiture. And then we have the opportunity to share the proceeds with those who did the predominant amount of work in seizing the money. And it's almost all, to my way of observation, drug dealers with the money. And so often, 80% of the cases, DEA tells us, are not even contested. They know Mama didn't give them $20,000 in cash, for heaven's sake. You know, they used to say, well, I wanted gambling in Las Vegas. Now we say, like, when have you been to Las Vegas? Well, you know, but now Las Vegas keeps records of their money, so they don't get away with that as much as they used to, it seems to me. So criminals shouldn't profit from their crimes. That's the first thing you want to do. Sheriff Davidson has been a long-time advocate for this approach, and I particularly appreciate your leadership on it. helping law enforcement do their jobs, helping the police get better at your work, and there are techniques and things that actually work out there, and celebrating the noble, honorable, and challenging work of our law enforcement communities will always be a top priority of President Trump and this Department of Justice. We know that this is important. So I got 2 orders, actually 3 orders when I became Attorney General. One was to reduce crime in America. The second one was to protect the men and women in blue and brown, whatever color you wear. But it's a law enforcement thing, that we're to stand with you from the President. A third order was to go after these transnational criminal organizations. But that is our mission. It comes from the top, and you can know we're at it. We can do it. We can bring down crime and give every American more peace of mind, that families can let their children play outside and not have to do, as the mother of these 2 teenage girls told me, that when they wait on the school bus, they have to go out and stand with their children on the street corner. Something is wrong when that happens. So I want to close by reiterating my deep appreciation, profound thanks to the men and women of law enforcement, to me personally, that you've given to me, and I want to thank every sheriff in America. Since our founding, the independently elected sheriff has been the people's protector, who keeps law enforcement close to and accountable to people through the elective process. The office of sheriff is a critical part of the Anglo-American heritage of law enforcement. We must never erode this historic office. I know this, you know this. We want to be partners. We don't want to be bosses. We want to strengthen you and help you be more effective in your work. The work that you do, that you have dedicated your lives to, is essential work for our country. I believe it. The Department of Justice believes it. The President believes it. And you can be sure of this. We have your back. You have our thanks. God bless.
General Sessions, thank you for being with us this morning. Before you go, we want to present you with a small token of our appreciation, an NSA badge, pin, and challenge coin. We look forward to your continued support and involvement and support of the nation's sheriffs.
Sir, I think you have a few friends in the room. And you're right, we will see the President tomorrow, a number of us, and he has told us a year ago that our job was to work with you and to work with Congress to solve many of the problems that we laid forth last year. And I want to leave you with one final word before you, I know you have to go for a family thing. You said you have our back. We have your back and the President's back. Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Good. Thank you again. Thank you all. God bless you.